Again here, and second live stream of the day on a real world. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in to all of them so far. Absolutely delighted to have my next guest on here. So yeah, my next guest here is someone I've got to know on the Maths Tutors UK group for a few years now, and we were just chatting earlier. She is the most experienced live streamer of everyone because she's already been live streaming anyway, so no pressure. On both of us actually. So yeah, you've done a maths degree, taught at maths at university, taught at schools, run CPD programs for teachers, based in sunny Cumbria. But we will be chatting about what's one of my favorite areas of maths, which is early years and primary maths. So welcome to the floor and the stage, Rebecca Hanson.
Hi, Atul. I was just trying to share that, but I've failed. But thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, by all means, just share it on your Twitter, on your Facebook, and
I'll just flick across and try and do that. But it didn't have a share button. I was on your page. What was it? Athlrana Maths Tutors UK. Oh no, Athlrana Online Tutor.
Yeah, let's do that so that we
can. That now.
Yeah. There's no share button on the.
Oh, it's got a share button now.
Didn't
have before.
Definitely. So Rebecca's sharing this on her Facebook group, and I'll put it on Twitter. So this is a live event, actually, just like the last live stream. It's we really want you to ask questions based on what we're talking about. So if you ask a question, we'll put it out there and then we'll answer it. And this is all about getting a conversation started. So we can of course record a video together and then publish it on YouTube, but that's nowhere near the same as this live. I love live stuff. It's like
I love live. Yeah. It's just the most wonderful thing.
Anything can and will happen. So like like cats getting in the way or like young children or something. Fantastic. I love it. Bring it on. And yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, maybe we can just sort of build up from there. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your background, how you got into maths teaching, what you do currently, and we take it from there. Yeah.
Okay, so my interest has always been in maths teaching in areas with many challenges. I went to a school myself, which was one of the worst sync schools in Britain. It was the kind of school where the good teachers were the ones who sent you home at 2:45 so you didn't get beaten up on the way home, and sent whole classes home, and there was really very little teaching going on. So that's my background, and I was lucky enough to escape from that and go to Cambridge to do maths, and all sorts of doors opened to me. And I worked as a business analyst for a while and did a few other things, but ultimately I decided that my career was in working in maths education and teaching, focusing on what works in those areas with many challenges.
Right. And you do a bunch of stuff at the moment, right? So you've got your own YouTube channel, you've got something that educates parents, and you also run CPD for teachers in where you're based.
Yeah. So I worked in secondary maths teaching, was a head of maths, and then went to lecture first at Manchester Met and then for the Open University. And from there, I was following the classic career in being an expert in maths education, and was going to go on and do my PhD and continue to lecture part-time. But that world just ended. So my life went in a different direction. There didn't seem to be much point in doing a PhD and pushing back the frontiers of knowledge when knowledge itself was being persecuted. So I went into politics as part of my life and sort of tried to challenge what was going on, which has been fascinating, but I failed. And then in 2013, I looked at the new primary maths curriculum and went, oh my God, we're teaching everything younger than anywhere else in the world. It's not been trialed. There's no rationale for it. We're going to impose Shanghai teaching, but they don't start teaching the maths in Shanghai until children are 7, and we teach it when they're 4. And they're going to roll all this stuff out nationwide. And I wrote an article about that got into the national press, and the Cumbrian primary heads picked up on it. I was based in Cumbria. They invited me in to talk to them because I was actually talking about the things they were concerned about in a way that made sense.
Right.
And in those discussions, I said, look, I'm really, really worried because we have brilliant maths teaching practice here in Cumbria. We've got teachers who can just teach apparently effortlessly, and all their kids thrive, and they all make several years of progress in a year. And it's essential to what we do because more than half the primary schools in Cumbria have mixed year classes. And none of what was being rolled out had thought about mixed year classes.
Right.
So I said, well, what we need to do is try and capture what our most brilliant teachers know and learn to share it through our own professional development. Rather than starting with what the government are directing, we should start with what we know works and try and make it work with this very challenging curriculum. And some really, really brilliant head teachers totally got that and invited me in to work with them to help to develop that professional development, which went through 4 generations of rewrites over 5 years. And we had about 500 teachers involved. And then in 2018, I realized I was going to be moving away from Cumbria and leaving that. And I thought I should write it up and free share it. So I thought about doing a PhD then. And ended up, after a lot of really profound discussions, deciding that I should free share it to YouTube. So I started that late last year, free sharing the reception class training and then the year 1 training. And then I was going to launch the channel just as at the end I got the year 1 training live. And that was 2 weeks into lockdown. So my audience that I'd been carefully crafting and building up had completely disappeared. There's nothing going on. So I swapped across to do series for parents.
Right.
And that's on my Rebecca the Maths Lady YouTube channel, if anyone's interested. And it explains the essence of maths teaching one-to-one. So that's great for tutors because they don't, in my series for teachers, we talk a lot about the craft of working with 30 children at once and getting every child unpacking their thinking at the same time and every child constructing a really deep understanding of maths. It's much easier when you've just got one of them.
Yeah.
You don't need that stuff.
I always teach one-on-one. I always teach online. And obviously I meet a lot of teachers at the maths conferences. It's nothing but my complete and utter respect for trying to convey that knowledge to 30 pupils at the same time. Also, just looking at the comments here, we've got Lizzie saying, "Hi, Atul and Rebecca, looking forward to your chat this afternoon. So if you're tuned in, please put us any questions. Say hello. Tell us where you are in the country. We want you to get involved." So yeah, it's really, you made so many interesting points there. I could like riff off on quite a few of them. Well, education and politics they're connected in such a deep way, so it's hardly a surprise that you've gone into politics to make a wider difference. And for me, culturally speaking, I grew up in 5 different countries, so and I went to school in 5 different countries, and I realized you cannot like put a teaching method from one country to another without the culture. The culture is a massive part of that country. Like, I have a little bit of a joke with my tutees that don't like maths sometimes. I specialize in dyscalculia and low attainment maths. It's my absolute favorite area of teaching because it's like I like to turn it around like that. The more they hate maths.
Can you put into words why you love it so much, Atul? Why you love working with the children who are struggling most?
It's because I love the subject and I feel I can turn them around and make them love the subject because I see it. I want them to see it the way I see it, and I know that what's in the way is other stuff like anxiety or other like experiences they've had is negative. And if I can then convey it to them in the way I see it, even give them a little portion of it, I see this turnaround happening very slowly, like using multiple representation, and a lot of that is early maths, which is why I'm so keen to have you on. Like that reception and early maths teaching is extremely underrated. A lot of like the maths CPD and teaching communities based on secondary maths, on abstract methods, and
Yeah.
it all happens in these early stages. So I'm working.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was a secondary head of maths and lecturing in education, we were always talking about the fact that the kids with the most serious problems, it was in their early maths, and we didn't know how to address that. So spending all this time focusing on the early years and lower primary has been just a joy, because it's gradually all come into focus as to precisely what the issues are that kids are facing. And it was a testing question, really, because for me, when you really fix a child's maths, you do more than just fix their maths. You transform their self-confidence and their life expectations, and really the whole child. And it's so fulfilling. It's just the most wonderful thing to be able to do with a child.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that question. It's such an important one, and like it's that teacher tutor tutee relationship is like, it's part teacher, part mentor, part friend, in some ways part parent, part like coach, part cheerleader. And I've been saying goodbye to like a few year 11s that I've had for a few years, and it's quite sad, that moment that comes, because there's so much that's gone into it, like the time investment from on both sides. And I know I don't want to make too much of a big deal about it, but it is life transforming for students. I've had parents tell me that. I've had parents tell me like that my child started doing better in their cricket, in the other parts of life, and initially I didn't realize why, and I couldn't accept the fact that it was my teaching in maths that made the difference in all other things. But I feel like
Atul, can we just do a quick sound quality check, because it is raining cats and dogs here and it's quite noisy. Is it still okay at your end? Is it picking up?
Yeah, it's fine, actually. You've got your
experience. Okay.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah.
So we were just talking about changing kids' life. Have you had the kids when you were working face to face, the kids who were absolutely white at your door, who were just terrified to come in, and have been everything their parents could do to get them there? Have you had that experience?
Yeah, I often I get dyscalculia inquiries all the time, and I often tell the parents, actually, this is probably the most important step in the entire tutoring. The fact that you have found me and made a message and convinced your child to do this thing. Sometimes it doesn't go ahead. I've had instances where the anxiety takes over because they're a teenager. They've had like years of telling them that they're crap at maths. They're never going to do that. Like all kind of social cues from others. So it doesn't actually go ahead because you get this kind of online anxiety.
So sad.
I know. I ping them back like a few months later. Like, can we try again? I mean, because I know that once they get started, it's gonna fall into place, and it will be a life transforming thing. I'm doing that currently with a bunch of tutees all over the world. I can tell you, like, I had a tutee in New Jersey on Monday, and this child is 9 years old and probably stuck in their maths from about 4 or 5 years old. And I see this child get these little Cuisenaire square ones. So this is an exercise I do where you get them out and you make rectangles out of them, or squares. And we got the 16 out, and 16 is quite a lot of those little cubies. I call them little cubies. This child is kind of arranging them and trying to make a rectangle out of them. And the moment she made a square, she just looks at the square. She just goes up to me in her little American accent. "It's a square." I said, "Well, that's a square number." And this that moment is just, it's amazing, and this like fact that this person is like 1,000 of miles away and I'm here, and we've just connected and this thing is clicked, and like there's so many things that is that's
so what you touched on there is that visual structures are really, really powerful in engaging children who've struggled with maths and helping them to see what they didn't previously see. And that's really been the root of sussing out what's going on with these brilliant teachers that I've been working with. Because when you just ask them, what is it about what you do that's so good? They'll often talk about, oh, well, we do everything with natural materials and we're outside a lot. Or they really think about one aspect of their teaching, and there's so much they miss that they're doing that they don't realize they're doing. And what really matters is these structures, whether they are systematically teaching the fundamental structures of primary maths. So counting beads, can children see when they're working with early numbers? Can they see their numbers to 100 like this?
Right.
Can they bridge at tens when they add a one-digit number to a two-digit number? So if they're doing something like 57, add 4, are they seeing it going on as a 3 and a 1 rather than counting on one at a time? Need structure to do that. They need to deeply understand the number line.
I've got this version of the blue and red beads, rec and rec, so that's
yeah,
nice representation.
They need to deeply understand a number line and be able to move left and right and zoom in and out. And that's quite tricky because it's a continuous structure of number with 11 numbers on but 10 spaces. And making that adjustment, I published a video on that today on my channel if anyone's interested on how you introduce that and make sure children know it and understand it. Tomorrow's video is on base 10 apparatus, another fundamental structure.
Right. And
next week we'll be covering part whole so that people deeply understand subtraction, an array as a fundamental structure for multiplication and division. And then when we do fractions, we do circular fractions, pizzas. And finally, we work with linear fractions, which just a slight tweak on the number line, the proportion bar. So the size of 1 is fixed and controlled rather than being able to move and change in size. So it's a bit different from CVA teaching as it's usually interpreted today, because with CVA teaching, how most teachers use it, they decide what concept they're going to teach. And then they add in some apparatus that supports thinking about that concept and gradually withdraw it, going through a visual stage in between. But this is different, and it's why it's so much more efficient and powerful and transformative, is that you really thoroughly teach the key structures. And then the maths flows from them. And it really does. It doesn't sound very obvious, but it does. And it's why the teachers that I work with, they can teach the curriculum in a much more condensed time scale. And they can go off topic completely if they just want to go out, take their class out to play in the snow, or something's happened that they want to focus on. And they're going to be able to bring it back together and just make sure every child gets it. They know what they're looking for in the child's development of their deep understanding of maths.
And that's great. I mean, you're more, you do this more than I do, of course. And what would your, children will come into reception or year 1, presumably with quite a lot of maths knowledge from home, right? I've got a little nephew who's only 6 months, but, they'll start, parents are using words like half, more than, less than. So presumably you get a whole range of pupils in the classroom. The
range of attainment when children start reception class is vast. You've got the current research suggests that certainly nursery teachers or teachers working with the numbers 1 to 10, 90% of the kids will just get it anyway. And they don't actually have to do anything apart from care for those children. The challenge is diagnosing the children who are not getting it and seeing it and understanding their world. So I've published my reception class training, and it starts with the baselining, which is all about whether a child actually understands what number is or not, because you may think they do because they can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but they may not actually be able to go and get 3 objects from a group of objects. So it's about doing tests like that, understanding what's happening for that child if they can't do that, and knowing how to fix it, because it can be diagnosed and it can be fixed. And a lot of the subsequent problems come because those children, they weren't diagnosed and that wasn't addressed early on. So the teacher flew on with maths and that child had no idea what was going on, and were gradually developing skills at faking understanding and telling the teacher what they wanted to hear. and were becoming expert at that from the very beginning.
Yeah, because children, I mean, I see this with teenagers all the time. They have extremely good social cues. They know the thing you want to hear. They want
Oh
like
yeah.
they agree with you, or they like they're so good at it.
And
Um,
they don't even realize it because they've been doing it since before they can remember. They don't see that there's any other way. They think that's what maths is.
yeah,
It's about rote learned spells and rules that they don't really understand, but they eventually manage to learn through a lot of practice. And
I would say it's the most crucial year, that reception year one, because you get this incredibly mixed cohort, and just from like a confidence point of view, if you think you're good at maths because you've done like a fair bit of it with your parents, and you come to class and you're okay with the speed at which it's happening, then you think you're good at maths, and you stay good at maths because it's like a self-perpetuating cycle, surely. Like, and it's such an important year. I know Bernie Westacott and some other people have talked about it, and like it's a mixed set as well, mixed attainment. It's like really mixed, isn't it? It's like you have to get it right, really right at that time, reception in year
that's
one.
my section of books on this. I've got some fabulous vintage books, vintage Montessori files and all sorts. Yeah. Please look after this book. This is pretty rare.
Right. Oh, music and maths.
Multi-skilled teaching through Montessori, integrated lots of stuff about color and shape and beautiful things. What else have we got? This is the early years Bible. This is, if anyone's seriously interested in earlier years, this is Clements and Sarama, right, which takes you through the whole learning trajectories. And there's some beautiful studies in here about very young children and how they do experiments with 6-month-old children, like your nephew, and they hold up 3 dot cards in front of them, one with 1 dot, one with 2 dots, one with 3 dots, in any order. And they'll beat a drum 1, 2, or 3 times and watch the eyes of the child, and the child will generally look at the dot card with the right number of dots for the number of drum beats. Nice. So you've got 6-month-old children decoding number in that degree of detail, but not all of them are doing it, and children pay attention to different things at different times. So if a child's learning about taste, they won't focus on number. And it's really difficult to control what aspect of the world around them they are learning about. And a lot of that just won't come. You can't control much about how a young children learns. You can give them access to stimulation and experience, which makes certain learning journeys likely. You can't force it, and that comes later.
I'm nearly obsessed with subitizing and numberness. Like numbers, digits, and numerals, they are like 3 different things, but we connect them in base 10 to the system we use. But you know, if you I only really started paying attention to that because of my recent teaching, and I had to like go back to the numberness. What on earth? What is the 5-ness of 5? Mark McCord classically calls it the 5-ness of 5. You can have the numeral 5 written huge, and another numeral written small. So 5 is larger than 2, or 5 is larger than 10, but the numeral 5 is written larger than 10. So like all these things are like in that early stage so important. Yeah. So, and then let's say we go. The other thing I find for me, like primary teaching, my youngest tutee is 7, and it's a real learning curve. It's really like intellectually demanding. I have to like put in quite a lot into it.
It is so demanding because so much of it is subconscious for an adult. You actually aren't aware you're doing it, and you, even if you become aware you're doing it, you don't know how you're doing it. So it's so much harder to teach than secondary maths, where it's all very rational and written down, and you can have an adult, you can clearly see what you're doing in your own mind the vast majority of the time, but most people don't know how they do easy calculations. Yeah,
I mean, just breaking it all down into numbers, numerals, digits, skip counting. So I was doing number bonds of 10. That's like such an important milestone in that learning journey. But fingers. And I was realizing at some points I was starting like trying to get to number bonds of 10 too quickly. I actually had to go to skip counting. So I have to like go 2, 4, 6, 8, starting from anywhere with an even number to going up in twos, or starting from an odd number at any one and going up in twos. I had to like I got in touch with other tutors like Catherine Rook. It's amazing with like her online stuff with top trump cards. Took a bunch more dyscalculia tutoring, read a lot more, and like the more I get into this, like the more it is like absolutely fascinating. Like that early maths, like that very very early maths, is just it's.
So you get into it, and then you see, oh, that's great, and that's great, and that's great, and I should do this and this and this, and then there's a whole other stage where you start to filter down and say, well, what's the essence of what I actually need to do? What's the heart of it? And that's again what these brilliant teachers have got. And they're not even often consciously aware that they are doing it, but they know the essence of the diagnosis of when a child can do it and when they can't. So in my series, my Rebecca the Maths Lady series for parents on YouTube, the first series I created was for the parents of the children who have never been able to do maths, the parents of the children who've never got it at all. And that does reception class. It focuses on reception class in year 1 maths, but it's in 5 very short episodes. The whole runtime is less than an hour. So I've taken it from going, oh, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting, perhaps we should do this, that, and the other, to what's the essence of what they need to do, and it's all there. And then the series that's going live just now is about number age 7 to 9. And it starts with children needing to be able to do, instead of adding by counting on 1 at a time, so if you're doing 48 add 7, counting on 49, 50, and so on, seeing it in the 2 parts, adding 2 to get to 50, and then adding another 5, and really getting that before you start. There's quite a few episodes before you get to formal calculation. So those episodes distill out precisely what the foundations of the maths are that determine whether a child's going to actually understand their formal methods or not. And then we do the formal methods and link it all back.
Yeah, there's a lot in that, isn't there? It's like bridging and knowing that in blocks of 10 we go into the next decade, and that kind of sensory information you're getting from those beads, and the color which also separates out the tens. And
yeah, they're great apparatus. That's why they call me Rebecca the Maths Lady, because when I turn up at schools I'm always carrying big bead bars and counting sticks and pizzas. And they just went, oh, you're the Maths Lady, and then eventually they learned my first name, so that's where my branding comes from.
Excellent. Yeah, we got Nikki Parr, who did a live stream earlier, and that was about handwriting actually, and she's saying, seeing the comparisons with this and handwriting, the importance of understanding early development and the processes and skills that our brains automate. So yeah, she's...
Quick tip to win, if you've got a child who's dyslexic with maths, to use arrow cards with them. Arrow cards are great,
right?
Because instead of writing the numbers and having to read them left to right to understand them, you build them up with these. So if you are doing 735, if you make the arrows fit together, the only way you can do that is like this. So when you give them a number, 735, they can decompose it and see it much more clearly, even though they may not be able to read left to right consistently. They're able to play around with it. And you can give them column addition or column subtraction with numbers given like this to build their confidence, as well as using apparatus, and just ignore getting them to free write or read numbers for a while if that's a big barrier.
Yeah. Like the formal written methods come a lot later, I imagine, because they've got to get used to the numberness of, I mean, I would use Dean blocks, for example, for like hundreds, tens, and units, and collecting them.
But the formal written methods for column addition, subtraction, short multiplication, and short division are all in year 3, which a lot of children leave when they're just 7.
Right.
They shouldn't be, but they are.
Yeah, and then the next landmark I see that creates a lot of inquiries and problems are, it's either negative numbers or fractions, which are really complex concepts, aren't they? Do you talk about how you get into negative numbers, what year, or what's the kind of representations you use?
So if we've clearly established the number line, then we can just put 0 here and count on 1, 2, 3 and explore what happens here. And then we can set up so they can clearly see the difference between, say, -2 and 3 and count that difference. It's about setting up your foundations clearly. And if you're working on fractions, if this is 0, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, we can put 1 here and count in halves. And when you get to 3 halves, we can talk about that being 1.5. We can span it out again and count in thirds or quarters. If we're counting in quarters, we can see that 2 quarters are 1/2 and talk about that. And meanwhile, we can also build up the understanding with our pizzas. So we're building these alongside that number line and knitting together 2 representations. This is kind of year 3, year 4, developing an understanding of fractions. And then we'll introduce the proportion bar later on with the controlled ends to allow us to properly link ratio, percentage, decimals, and compare them and work on those problems.
Yeah. And so that's great. We've got the 2 representations of the pizza, which is like the, I suppose, a closed one, part whole, and then you've got this continuous one on the number line that is like you can have 1 quarter, 2 1. You can go beyond the whole as well.
Yes.
With the pizza thing, it's obviously the whole and then part, but you can use that idea to build a part and then the line one to build a whole.
I have worksheets as well with number lines on, just with 11 marks and 10 spaces. People can download this. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's links to 3. You can download them from my Facebook group or my test site or my TPT site. It's just a very simple worksheet, but it allows you to do lots and lots of exercises with number lines where you put 2 numbers in and children fill in the rest, and you can really explore them together very quickly. But of course, you and all your fabulous tutors are onto, you need online tools, which I don't really have.
Yeah.
You can quickly draw a number line on your shared whiteboard with 11 marks and 10 spaces and work on that.
Yeah, we have a bunch of things, and I think that could be a separate call in itself with someone else. But yeah, we have like an interactive digital paper for the written work. It's got like 180 colors, and you can do all sorts of things with it. And then for the sometimes I get tutees to get hold of these things or borrow it from their school, because quite a lot of them have that in their schools. Cuisinart rods, so you get that kind of tactile part, and I've got one of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Tend to use the splits into 5 for numbers to 20. But when I'm doing intervention work with older children, I don't go back quite that far. I just go back to the bead string.
Right.
Generally, that's going back far enough. If a child is 10, 11, 12, usually going back to here is enough. You don't need to quite go back to the 5s and 1s structure, which I do cover in the first series.
Yeah.
And if a child is 8 or 9, I would go back to that.
I will go back to I'll go back to that. I mean, I've got a couple of teenagers at the moment, actually more than that. That I will go back to using a reckon with a 20 bead, or just if need be, we need to do work on number bonds, and we go up to the number bond of 6, actually using dice dot patterns, just like dice games. Yeah, so that's
really good. The best bit of apparatus for 5s and extras, 5s and 1s structure,
right.
Fingers and toes. It's the only bit of apparatus that our current political administration has not decided to remove from children. It's very reliable.
That'd be pretty harsh, removing the hands and the sort of dictatorships are in other countries. There's actually, I was going to say, when I started first teaching online this stuff, it really was this actually, because that's the best manipulative we've got, this is the reason we work in base 10.
Perfectly.
And that's what I was doing, and I still use that. So actually, you can do that online as well, because you can get them to do that.
My worksheets for working on numbers to 10 and numbers to 20 have got pictures of fingers and toes on. Yeah.
And with fingers and toes, I was talking to Nikki earlier about like music and dance, but do you use any kind of movement-based stuff? I think that's I'm beginning to appreciate the importance of that actually by doing my own dance stuff. In those early years, I imagine it's quite important to get like rhythmic movements in the way you say the numbers and the timing of it.
I think you should do a demonstration, Atul.
Yes.
I know you go live sometimes and play some music, but I'd like to see the dancing. If you're dancing, I'm tuning in.
Right. I mean, I live stream my music stuff, which is a bunch of covers and things. I'm not sure if I'm brave enough to live stream the dancing stuff because I'm a novice learner, and
it might get more views.
Yeah, probably will get more views. Yes. And I do partner dancing, which is Argentine tango. So my excuses are A, I don't have a partner, and B, I'm a novice learner. But it's in the back of my head somewhere, and yeah, I'm reading books where you can get children to tap on there and then count, and that supposedly helps. But
I deliberately try and keep everything as simple as possible. If that stuff's fun and it works for you, use it. But in my professional development for teachers and tutors, I try to just communicate the very heart of it so that they are going to deeply know when other things are going to work. So in this 5s and 1s structure that you've got in your abacus, and is also in the rake and rake, and in your fingers and toes, and it's in 10 frames, and it's on the coat hanger with the pegs in 5, 5, 5, 5 colours. I move them around with pegs. I'll have one somewhere, but I think it involves moving furniture, so I'm not going to try that just now.
Yeah, sure.
So many bits of apparatus that are doing exactly the same thing. So I talk about the structure of 5s and 1s, and it doesn't matter which apparatus you use. Ideally, use 2 bits, fingers and toes and something else, and then children have got it. So once you start to see how different bits of apparatus are related, like Dean's blocks and base 10 counters are the same apparatus, just in a different form, the same structure of number. Once you start to see that, then you're free to innovate and do whatever you feel and really bring it to life with your students, because you've got the essence of what you need and you can build out from there.
Yeah, I find the cheapest manipulative actually, which for both me and student, is these guys, which is just counters. Actually, you can do loads with counters. I'm amazed how much you can do.
Yeah. Where are my 2-sided counters? There's a whole video. Have you seen Maths for Kids? Where we've got a great maths teacher who gets her daughter to do the videos, and the daughter just loves it.
Right, yeah.
It's a YouTube channel, Maths for Kids.
Yeah, I think I've seen 1 or 2 videos, 4. Yeah, child doing it, yeah.
And there's a whole load of stuff. The daughter does a whole load of stuff with 2-sided counters. But mainly I just use them for partitioning.
Right.
And then, of course, your... so partitioning, I mean, if you've got 7 of number 7, how can you partition that into 2? Well, it's like throwing 7 of those counters in the air and thinking how many could be red and how many could be yellow. That's the most important exercise with 2-sided counters. But if you're working with place value counters, let's see there.
1/10, okay.
The 2-sided place value counters are great. So they can see it. Oops. Probably best not to choose a brown one. There we go.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It's really clear there, yeah.
And they can...
yeah, no, I get that. 100th.
Having those on the 2 sides is just fabulous.
Yeah, any kind of manipulative, tactile kind of thing that... Yeah, I do that with it's amazingly, I've had students who are using I do 0 pair work with the counters as well, so a red and a yellow, the 0 pair each other out when I go into negatives. And
oh yeah,
online you have these websites where you put the 2 together and it just disappears, becomes 0. Actually just disappears completely.
We do the same concept with hot water and ice cubes. It's the same thing. And with money and debt.
Yeah, I'm doing that with an adult actually at the moment, and it's really interesting because I'm reintroducing negative numbers using negative pairs, but because they're an adult, they understand debt and debit and credit, so it's a lot easier for them to get that because they're used to it. But still, there's there's a few holes in understanding the negative and positive. So we go back to like this representation of positive and negative numbers using this tactile manipulative. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I made a few notes when we had our little chat of a few questions I could ask, see a few things we can go on to. You are running you're involved in a conference or a group where
Oh, yeah, this is really exciting. It's just gone live this morning. People can book online. It's the Educator Inquiry Summit, and it's going to be the biggest ever education conference. I'm networked with people in the global education forums, and I was chatting to them in the early days of lockdown, and they decided to try and put a conference together, and they just invited all the top education speakers with a slight primary focus. They're more primary than secondary. The top education speakers around the world, and they all said yes. I mean, the keynote speakers are just phenomenal. It's all free. You can just go and sign up and then go to whatever keynotes and workshops you want. And Joe Bowler is doing the keynote for maths. And let me just go and have a look, because it's
if you don't mind
let
giving
me
some
do the plug, because if you sign up, Kirsten, here we go. So keynotes are from Joe Bowler, Kath Murdoch, Kevin Bartlett, Roseanne Bosch, Sagartha Mitra, Trevor McKenzie, Vishen Lakhani, keynote speakers around the world. And I am doing a workshop, which I'm really excited about. I'm doing one about the future of global primary maths education. And it links back to what you said earlier about how cultures differ, and what's valued in education differs in different countries, and your parameters differ, and therefore what's considered to be brilliant practice will also differ. And I'm trying to help teachers really appreciate what they do, and also appreciate that maybe what someone else is doing that's very different is also very brilliant.
I think this is such an incredible opportunity. The whole internet and the way we are connecting live like this. You're in Cumbria, I'm in London. I had Nikki earlier, and I'm in another tutor group. It's called the Ultimates group, Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors, and we may have a live stream or a live call like this where we have I've seen 20-30 tutors, and we have someone from India, we have someone from New Zealand, we'll have quite a lot in the United States. Actually, they are much more prominent there, a few in the UK, and we exchange all these ideas, and culturally we're so different. Even the United States compared to the UK, like culturally we are English speaking countries, but very different in the way
Scotland
we approach.
Compared with England, I work in Scotland as well, and of course they haven't had the political intervention in education that we have had. And they've got a different historical culture as to what's valued in education.
Yeah, and of course, Scotland and Wales have their own.
There is a big thing going on here, Atul. I think we're in a third age of enlightenment where people across the globe can come together to try and puzzle out things in more depth than has ever been possible before. And it's really exciting. And I was at the heart of that until 2010 in UK maths education, when that culture was shut down and there was no more consultation, let alone full co-production. So that's when I went global. I mean, a lot of experts in education just left the UK and went abroad. Most of them are abroad, like Joe Bowler and many others. But I have my global group on LinkedIn, which is math education, math culture, where we've been having fascinating discussions for the last 10 years. And I'm part of this global educator collective, which is a Facebook group with 127,000 in, which has led to this conference. And when co-production in education stopped, I started doing it in healthcare through politics, because that has developed. And I've written a book about how that's done. Did I tell you about this book?
No, by all means, just if you have a copy, plug away.
Oh, I'm not plugging. I don't think this is the target audience, but this is healthcare co-production. It's all about how you create healthcare policy by involving absolutely everyone who will have knowledge and insight to contribute in that development process, which is where we were going with Maths Ed until 2010. And I didn't want my whole opportunity to contribute to 21st century enlightenment and the way the world is going just to stop. So I've had parallel lives in education and politics and health.
Yeah. I think if you really, really want to make a difference, that's what you end up doing. I mean, my experience of politics is fairly limited, but it was all student union politics, and I really, really wanted to make a difference to student lives, and I ended up being in student, and I fought elections and stuff, and lost some, won some, and that's life.
You learn a lot by losing.
Yeah, yeah, you do, you really do, and it made me a much more mature individual. Just like learning people's different points of views, the people you disagree with most, actually, you learn from the most, and you learn to talk and debate in a mature way about the ideas they have, not the personalities. You have to like separate the two out, and we'd still go out to the bar and have a drink after like being in a union council and debating on the other side.
Well, I've seen the very best of politics. I'm a county councillor in Cumbria, and the quality of politics there on Cumbria County Council is phenomenal. You've got a three-way split between the three main parties, so nobody has overall power. And that's very healthy. It keeps it very pragmatic, and there's a great collaborative culture. I've got friends across all parties. I'm absolutely a pragmatist, and I work with anyone who's doing evidence-based policy development, and everybody there does. And anyone from any party can go off on a line that they absolutely believe in, but isn't grounded in reality. And we all challenge them, no matter which party they are. It's just very healthy.
Yeah.
This climate and this crisis is being thoroughly tested. We've spent the last 7 years in a coalition turning over top executives, supporting them, nurturing, mentoring them to become very brilliant. And our team, the way they've responded to the coronavirus crisis, getting the chance to watch them close up and do the scrutiny and the mentoring of how they've rebuilt the whole structures of government rapidly, changed everyone's jobs, retrained everyone, rebuilt the IT infrastructure and all the metrics as they're emerging, integrated them into a new system, and just responded to everything. It's just been a huge privilege to be part of, really.
I totally agree with your Enlightened movement. For me, I saw it years ago, and all this time I've been like the Maths Tutors Network. It's online. Then all the CPD that I've been taking recently. These US groups meeting you. I think what is really unique, irrespective of the system or the politics around us, is that teachers can do this kind of thing. You're in Cumbria, I'm in London, and we can start making these connections between teachers and tutors and any educators. And Mark McCord has this great line that if all maths teachers got to know each other and became friends with each other, I think everything else is irrelevant, because we'll learn from each other so much. And tutors have been missing this. For me, I was a one-man band, and until 4 years ago I knew no one really. I mean, it's so easy not as a tutor, not in education. I haven't got an education degree, PGC or anything, so I was tutoring on my own for all these years, and it's hard to believe it's how lonely it is. So for me, I'm just learning at an incredible rate, just meeting tutors, doing these live streams, and that's the most empowering thing, actually. Other teachers coming together and discussing things they agree on, disagree on, learning, reading books, going off on tangents, and getting this other manipulative, doing that. So I already know what manipulatives I'm going to get, because you've shown me some new ones, you've given me some book references, and it's and you can never really learn enough. You're always becoming more learned, expert as a teacher in learning these things. So really, really excited about this.
The world is changing for the better. At least it should be. And then populism comes along in politics, and it all just gets thrown aside, and it's scary.
Yeah. Yes, I've read all the Yuval Noah Harari books like *Sapiens* and *21st Century*, and yeah, like everything's moving so fast, and the technology
Just
is
when
there.
you think you're making progress, there's political capital in persecuting experts and having a revolution. It's all gone.
Okay, brilliant. We
And
got
on that happy note,
yeah. No. On that happy note, well, we'll just go back to a little bit of maths ideas. Actually, is there any other manipulatives, any other things that you use quite a lot, and any other ones you want to share that's easy to share? I know you've shown us the beads, you've shown us a ruler.
at the heart of the stuff that I do that's unique, I mean, a lot of people have covered bar modeling and part whole work, so they understand subtraction better than they used to. But one thing people struggle with is the question, why is division both counting groups and sharing fairly? So if you give people 15 objects and ask them to shut their eyes and divide their 15 objects by 3, and I do this often in teacher training, some people will share the 15 into 3 equal piles of 5, and some people will make 5 piles of 3. And both are perfectly valid and give the correct answer. So I do a lot of work with array, just organizing things in rectangles. And I would deal out 15 cards, deal them out like this. Deal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then ask people, have I found the answer of 5 by sharing fairly or by counting groups? Have I split that into 3 equal groups and found that each group is 5? Or have I counted groups of 3 and found that there are 5 groups?
Right.
An array is this powerful structure that does both at the same time. And when you get going with array, all sorts of things become possible. On my channel, there's some videos on Year 6 maths about multiplying fractions, multiplying mixed numbers by whole numbers. But quite young, you can get children going. What have I done with my board rubber?
Yeah, it's a lovely whiteboard as well. It's a mini whiteboard with the...
It's my equivalent of bit paper.
Right, it's a square. I love this stuff. I need to get one of this. And
could a primary school age child do a calculation like 2.5 times 2.5? Well, if you just draw it, 2.5 times 2.5, and you know that in multiplication you're just counting the squares. And one number tells you one side of your rectangle and the other tells you the other side. Then the discipline, with a little bit of support, they should be able to puzzle out that that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's a quarter. So the answer is 6.25.
That's neat. Yeah.
There's a lot of neat stuff in this atoll. And of course we do multiplication of fractions through array, just zooming in on one square. If you're doing, say, 2/3 times 3/4, well, we only need 2/3 of a square, so that bit's gone. And we want to go 3/4 of the square high. So this bit's gone. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with 3/4, 2/3. So that's 6 out of 12, 6/12. And if you carry on working with this, you ultimately see that the bits you want are the numerators multiplied, the 2 times the 3. This was 2/3 times 3/4. And the total number of parts are the denominators multiplied always.
You got the 12
so
there.
You get your proof of A over B times C over D equals AC over BD.
Neat. Yeah.
But you do the understanding of it before you teach the shortcuts. And it all meshes together. And it runs through, I mean, all of this stuff runs right through. I wish I could find my board rubber. Oh, it's over there.
Yeah, it's the
runs right,
area model, isn't it? So it's really, really powerful, the area model.
yeah, it runs right through into calculations like that.
I've got my algebra tiles.
Good man. So if this is x add 2 and that's x add 3, then you get your x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6. And you can do it with negatives as well. Long multiplication is all done with grids of paper. Just count the squares and look for shortcuts. Array does all of multiplication, division, until you get onto compound measure and functions and you need to look at gradient. Yeah. Until then, everything can be done with array.
Yeah, oh, it's very, very powerful. The array area array model is it's really, yeah, I use it quite a lot actually. With I can see, yeah, that I like that whiteboard. I have to get hold of that one because you've got the two sides, the blank side and the grid one, and it's you can just write on that. So yeah, I use that online. Some tutees just like using a physical whiteboard, so we just do that. I use bit paper, they use a whiteboard, or vice versa. Yeah, it's a really neat. It's also, you can rub it out very quickly, so they don't mind. It's more of a like we were doing this with Nikki earlier, as a where you do your ideas. It doesn't have to be neat, doesn't have to be nice. It's just very quick. Rub it out, start again, rub it out, and you got the lines. So it's a sort of a manipulative in itself, like using the whiteboard versus pen and paper, yeah, it's the same like online. Yeah, big fan of the area model. I use algebra tiles all the time, and then I do the similar sort of thing with the little Cuisenaire blocks, but it takes some time to like lay them all out one by one.
Yeah, I'm not known for my taking time and neatness. I'll just scribble it.
Yeah, right.
Approximately this, and it works.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be perfect for the children to understand.
Yeah.
Because that's the wonder of working with them one-to-one. You're watching them in the eyes, and you know if they've got it or not.
Yeah.
And if they haven't, then you can do it more neatly.
Yeah. It's that real-time feedback, which is why I so like it. Yeah. We got people watching. We got we got on the maths group. Just gonna look at comments. Lizzie's commented earlier. Twitter is looking good too. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to look at notes if there was anything else I wanted to ask. We talked about the conference. I think I've got covered most of the questions. Is there any sort of...
You've got your fantastic panel interview coming up. I bet you're looking forward to that. It's tomorrow, isn't it? 2:30?
Yes, yeah, we've got every Thursday, actually, Thursday afternoon, so we are lining up speakers, and I'm doing this one as well on Wednesday. It looks like Wednesday is the day when I do with tutor colleagues, and then the Thursday is the big one where we get the panel. But it's all kind of, it's evolving naturally. We're just letting it evolve.
With lockdown, discovering what's possible.
Exactly, yeah. And my contribution to this is, I mean, this is my world. I mean, I can obviously show you a bit paper and all the other sophisticated things I do online, but I do this all the time. Like, I teach 5-6 hours a day, nearly every day, including Saturdays. It's changing around because our year 11s are finishing and all stuff, but I've been doing this. I mean, I stopped teaching in person in 2016 because I developed a pedagogy of teaching online, which for me and for a whole bunch of other reasons, I've started to feel it was really, really good. In fact, it was better than what I was doing in person. So I stopped teaching in person, and the other advantage I got of teaching online was I could start helping people like on the island of Bermuda, or somewhere in a rural area of England, or I've had sent Kitts Island during Hurricane Irma, like, you know, adults with dyscalculia, or they never had the
can't see that working for me though, because I like to work with the children with the most extreme challenges, who are usually from the backgrounds where the parents aren't going to be motivated to get this set up. And I just, the way I work with them, I mean, I was explaining to you at the weekend, I've never seen any child under the age of 10 more than twice, because it's never taken longer than that to completely sort them out and get them diagnosed. And I see them with the parent. but they walk into a room full of apparatus and play with it. And I don't think I guess the other aspect of it is that it's a hugely human experience. I read children and I know when they're stressed, and I can respond to them, and also to the parent. In my house, I can send a child off to play with my daughter and just chat to the parent and sort of get to the heart of the issues. And sometimes it's not even about maths. Sometimes it's wider than that, the blocks to learning. We need to talk through all that and rebuild their confidence, not just their math skills.
Great. Actually, the questions have started coming in, which is great. Amelie's saying she likes the arrays on the Maths Tutors group. Julie's got a question on the Maths Tutors group. I have a year 5 with Sen who can't understand 1/4 of a group of objects, but can easily understand 1/4 of a length, shape, or number as long as it's in a straight line. I think that's actually more a statement.
Wonderful. Yeah. That's really interesting, because there's a specific way of teaching which was invented by Vasily Davidov, who was one of Vygotsky's students, which teaches number through length from the very beginning through measure. So you get an understanding of continuous number before you get an understanding of discrete number. So children learn to judge numbers by comparative lengths and ratio, rather than by working with individual objects. So there's 2 ways. I mean, one is to give them individual objects and either freely ask them to organize them into 4 groups, but if they can't see the quarters, if they've got no visual understanding of quarters to sort them into, then I would go back to the pizzas and get them building pizzas with different fractions, building up their visual understanding of quarters in a circle. And then you can draw a circle in quarters and get them to organize the objects that you're trying to find a quarter of into the 4 quarters. And then they can see 1/4 and see 3/4. So with fraction, you need 2 understandings of it. One is linear and the other is circular. So it sounds like they're completely missing their circular understanding of fraction. And you can also do it through an array as well, and I'm doing a video on that. It's about a week and a half off, and I've got some worksheets for that too, which is great. But I would play with these. They're very powerful, great for equivalent fractions and for adding and subtraction fractions. And children just need this understanding, or they're not going to cope with pie charts and things like that later. So it's an important foundation to develop.
Yeah, that's
any other questions?
Such an important idea in maths, isn't it? The discrete view of numbers and the continuous representation. And you want to start off with the discrete one, because number lines, etc., continuous. There's a vector element to it as well as a directionality. And
well, you say you want to start off with the discrete, but the Russian Davidov view is that you don't. You want to start off with the continuous, but that's not what we do. That's a specialism. I know Professor Anne Watson is supervising a PhD on it just now, and they're investigating it, which is just fascinating. I was chatting to her about it recently.
Great. Yeah, Julie's just continuing to write. Thanks. She has severe dyslexia and dyspraxia. That's that more specific detail about that student. Yeah, it's all maths, and it's fascinating, like your polar coordinates, or like the circular representations of linear line, area representation arrays. But we know that. But
well, it's really important to teach children the circular representation of fractions, because when I go to Sainsbury's and ask for a pizza from the pizza counter made into thirds, into 3 equal bits, some of the girls behind the counter can't do that because they've got no image of thirds in a circle in their head. And they're like, we don't do thirds. We can do halves or quarters, but we don't do this. It looks like this, like a Y shape.
Like the Mercedes symbol, or the peace symbol. Yeah, so that's how you make it into thirds in that circular representation. Yeah, loads of stuff. Okay, great. We've yeah, we could probably wrap up there. We had a nice bit of
Thanks for
engagement.
this. Great fun.
Yeah, no, it's
So
great.
for my Rebecca the Maths Lady YouTube channel, please go and subscribe, and you'll be able to find all my professional development going there for free. I completed the series for teachers for reception in year 1. And after lockdown, or when I've completed my lockdown work, I'm going to return and share the rest of the primary years. But during lockdown, I'm kind of covering the whole of primary maths, but for one-to-one teaching. I've been doing this forever. 10 years ago, I wrote the NCTM microsite for teaching assistants in classrooms one-to-one teaching. So it's been building from that ever since. So it's lovely to get a chance to put it down for one-to-one while there's an interest. And if I get 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, I will live stream there taking questions from parents or anyone who wants to ask questions in real time on a regular basis during lockdown, because I want to help the parents whose children are really struggling, help them get their heads round how to help their kids.
Absolutely fantastic. I've seen your YouTube channel. There's tons of great stuff on there. I'll plug it along with this. This thing will be on Facebook, my YouTube channel. It's on Twitter anyway, so you can just retweet. I can add your website and YouTube channel. I'd suggest people go there. Thank you so much for adding all that value. It's all for free, and people can go there and parents can learn.
People are welcome to copy anything I do and just take it and share it. It's just a labor of love. People say, oh, you're trying to self-promote, are you trying to make money? It's like, no, I'm just out there saying this because I think when I've run training, it's transformed people's lives and it's transformed kids' outcomes. So I want to talk about it because I think people need to know. And that's the only reason for doing it. I don't ever expect to be solvent.
Fantastic. So yeah, I'm just going to say bye now, but we'll stop streaming and we'll have a little quick chat after that, and then we can wrap up. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. I'll stop streaming now.